This is Coding Rook with a video after quite a long time. For the last actually more than a month, I have been busy. I participated, obviously, as you may know, in Game Dev TV's Game Jam with this submission, my 2.5D platformer, Brutal Times. And then shortly after that, I did a follow-up Game Jam, Epics 2020 Spring Jam with a team this time. And I can be busy. And then actually after that, I spent the entire month of June basically revisiting the Game Dev TV Jam game, Brutal Times, and trying to really kind of optimize it and make some improvements and really refactor a lot of the blueprint code into C++. I don't know if I saw a tremendous difference. I also mostly did it because I just wanted to practice. So for example, I have the old game here. If I pick an actor, for example, I've made a clone here. Let's see. The doors. Did I refactor the doors already? I may actually. Yeah. So this is already refactored. Okay. I have a clone here for the lighting actually. To experiment with lighting. I thought it was the original version of the game, but anyone who has seen the videos will remember that a lot of these actors had a lot of heavy scripting in the blueprints. Defining all the events and how the doors worked and how if the door had a certain logic to it, whether it was an OR, an AND, an XOR, in terms of how it required its puzzle elements to operate together in order to make the door to open. There was a lot of code here. So basically what I've done is I spent a lot of time refactoring a lot of that stuff to code rather than blueprint. It was good practice. Most of the things you can do in code as well as in blueprint, and it's actually easier to read and I think it's more manageable to maintain. The things that I kept in blueprint are really things like timelines and just calling the events. And so if I look at the code here, you see that a lot of the code was transported from ported from blueprint to Visual Studio. How you evaluate the different tests about the logic that the door implements, things like that. Definition of the delegates, I bind everything in code, and so on and so forth. And I did the same thing for all types of actors like that in the game, the doors, the braziers, for example, as well. The triggers, if I look at the platform triggers. Or triggered platforms, rather. I defined the delegates and the implementable events here. And now all of the code, including even things like the materials that are to be used by default. Checking for implementation of the activate trigger interface. All that is done now in code, and the code calls the blueprint events appropriately. I also had to kind of build out a bit more of a hierarchy in my classes. You know, now trigger platform inherits from trigger actor, so I had to kind of do a trigger actor and triggerable actor type of distinction. You know, the door or the spike trap are triggerable actors because they have other things that trigger them, and the trigger platforms are trigger actors, as you can see here. So now a lot of my, all of my blueprint assets are kind of light in terms of script. Literally this is it, and no other variables defined. Just a couple of settings here, you know, how far does the door travel when it opens, the sound that it makes, and literally this is it. Same for the trigger platform. This is it. Basically just the timelines, and everything else is handled in code rather than having, you know, massive spaghetti-like blueprints. So that's what I spend most of my time doing. One other thing I did was I realized, for example, my spikes everywhere in the scene were actors, even though only a few of them, a handful of them, were actually literally, you know, triggerable traps. Like, you know, this one, you cannot see it, the platform is invisible that you step on, but like underneath here, if I can go slowly enough, there you go, are some spikes. And everywhere in the scene, for example, like here, I had spikes over here, or for example, over here, I used to just replicate the same actor, which comprised of just the 3 spikes that make the trap. And obviously that meant for a necessary replication of an actor that ticks and has all these bound events to it, and just unnecessary object creation. And so what I ended up doing was basically replaced all the spike blueprint assets that were just merely there as an obstacle. I made it an instanced mesh, or an instanced foliage rather. So there you go, spike. And you can see I have 1,300 of them here. So, and then I lumped them together in groupings, and I only used one paint volume around them. I created my own custom paint volume. I realized I couldn't really work with the paint volume that comes out of the box with the engine. For some reason, it seemed like most of the player has to be in before it actually works, whereas I needed something that kills the player to the touch. So I created my own custom paint volume. It's a paint box. It has a sprite, this skull and bone sprite, just to make it easily identifiable in the scene, and it's basically a box component. I call it collision component because the default trigger box out of the modes here in Unreal also calls its box collision component. But anyway, so anywhere, if you touch the box anywhere, you know, as the player dies, it kind of simulates the effect of getting hurt by the spikes. And so, you know, if anybody has seen the previous videos, the spike actor previously had I don't know, 3 or 4 spikes in it, and every single one of them had its own little paint volume that was detecting overlaps. So that was kind of like an overkill and obviously massively unnecessary. Whereas this, I think this is kind of a good approximation. Actually, it's an improvement, I feel, overall. Far fewer paint volume boxes. So I feel like that is definitely an improvement in terms of design. I also killed the exponential fog. I just realized that I didn't really know how to use it very well. If we look back in the other game, did I keep it here? No, it's still here. It kind of made for this very awkward red, like orange looking sky. I was just going for like a kind of blood red sky effect, kind of. It just wasn't working. And so this is a bit brighter, but it also kind of conveys the mood of kind of a low sun, you know, kind of a dusk. And it actually made the map quite brighter inside. Not brighter, but just clearer, and I think it kind of shows the mood a little bit better. I killed a lot of the lights in here that were trying to highlight different areas, and I just went with just bright lights at a distance across the wall of the room, both this one and that one. It's not too bright, but then, you know, I felt like people were complaining that they couldn't really see at times. I have a lot to learn in terms of how lights work in Unreal, and I thought of spending more time trying to perfect the lights, but to be honest, I would be making very slow progress, and the videos and my streams would become, because I stream all of this on Twitch, they would become quite boring and uninteresting to people. So I just killed most of the spotlights and some other unnecessary lights, and I mostly have these huge ones, the very bright ones at the corner at the top of the wall that kind of illuminate the area. I may play around with it, maybe dim them a little bit more. This seems like a very bright scene here compared to this one, which is a little bit darker, mainly because of this kind of gap, this chasm that you cross as a player. But yeah, this was it, and I think I'm very near now to kind of putting a final, you know, touch and kind of pause and stop the work on this project, and lock it as the optimized version and improved version of the game jam submission. And then I am toying with the idea of starting afresh, I guess, and using this as a template for maybe a full platformer game along similar lines, you know, some puzzles, but this time around obviously not around the time theme. I mean, the time capsules and the timer for the game were there because of the game jams theme, which was time. But I'm thinking maybe a full game will probably not have that kind of theme, and then it probably will have maybe some NPCs, maybe some fighting, more like an adventure platformer. We'll see. But yeah, I'm nearly done and about to kind of, like I said, lock this version as the optimized version after I moved a lot of code to C++. And I do have a few more now classes here, you know, like I said, trigger actor and triggerable actor. A lot of the blueprint assets now have C++ versions as well, the treasure chest, the key, the spike trap. At times I use some kind of interesting functions and interface from UObject in terms of doing stuff post-load. For example, now in my trigger platforms, if I place any on the scene, I can actually, let me see if I can find it here. No, I can't remember where it was. But basically, if I go into the scene, I've implemented something so that in editor, I can just go like this. Oh, it's under puzzle element. Yeah, you have to click the trigger platform's puzzle element. And you can say, if it's not a toggle switch, you can change it to a normally open switch and it automatically changes to blue. So I kind of learned how to do these things. And all it was, if I go to the puzzle element component, all it was implementing a post edit change property, which is UObject's interface. and it is a simple code that says, get the puzzle element, and if you change the enumeration type, then you load in a new material. And the materials are now global static variables in the class of Trigger Platform. So yeah, this is the kind of things I did. I streamed most of it. Some of these earlier videos, because this has been going on for a month, some of these earlier videos are probably not on Twitch anymore, but if anyone is watching this, feel free to kind of hop over to Twitch and see any of those if you're interested. Otherwise, I think this may be the last time I am posting a video on Brutal Times, maybe the last time I'm streaming about it. And like I said, I think I will at some point just lock this version and post it on my GitHub account, or even on itch.io as a separate type of game, as a separate entry, I suppose, on my personal account. This was it. Thank you for watching. Thanks for those who have stayed with me during this journey. I will continue, like I said, with more work, streaming and posting YouTube videos on my progress. Either, like I said, on a new game based on the same kind of ideas here. I'm thinking about a platformer, adventure, puzzler type of thing. Or I'll continue with my experimentation on the other project that I had been streaming about and posting YouTube videos about, a time travel. I was calling it RPG, but it really is a time travel adventure puzzler type of thing. Maybe not so much an RPG, but we'll see. But yeah, I may continue on that one as well. Or if I really get serious about building a full platformer game, using this as a template and as a springboard, I may park that first project for a while. Anyway, thank you for watching and for following. This has been Coding Rook. Follow me on my YouTube channel, Coding Rook, and also by the same name on my Twitch account. Thank you all. Coding Rook signing out.